For a previous video, I had picked up Francis Fukuyama's Liberalism and Its Discontents. And even though it is non-fiction and academic, I was completely arrested. In less than 200 pages, Fukuyama has put forth a string of ideas, questions, and answers in a manner so simple, so forthright, and seemingly obvious. I would like to recommend this book to anybody who is the least bit interested in understanding how modern society operates and why it does that way. In understanding the way we think and why we think the way we think. In understanding the association between politics and economics. And where do these words such as freedom and choice that we identify with come from? What caught my attention right at the start was the opening of the preface. This book is intended to be a defense of classical liberalism. And the implication further down that his definition of liberalism differs from the way in which liberalism is perceived today, is understood today. The central or fundamental tenet of liberalism is autonomy. That is the ability to make choices with regard to speech, association, beliefs, and ultimately political life. Fukuyama argues that this autonomy or ability to choose one's career, preferred language, beliefs extends from cognition to politics, from the way we think and process information as individuals to the way we operate as a society. Now, this is an extremely wide bandwidth, and he has explained how this came to be in less than 200 pages. By the 16th century, the Roman Catholic Church was indulged in practices such as the sale of indulgences, which allowed people to buy forgiveness for their sins from the church. Practices like these helped the church to accumulate a lot of wealth and power, and they degraded the spiritual value of the church, which is why criticism and objections rose from some of its members. A religious scholar named Martin Luther wrote a document titled 95 Theses, in which he argued against the sale of indulgences and the already wealthy Pope's practice of collecting money from people. Martin Luther believed that the entire institutional structure of the Roman Catholic Church could be wrong and an individual believer with faith right. This led to the Protestant Reformation, which was a religious movement to reform Roman Catholicism. Protestantism was built around the idea that an individual believer with faith could read the Bible and come to their own conclusions about the Word of God. And it triggered a period of almost continuous violence across the continent of Europe, spanning 150 years. The warring parties represented different Christian sects which wanted to impose their particular religious dogma on their respective populations, but they were driven by social and economic factors such as the monarch's greed to seize the church property. Around this time, and in light of the religious-fueled violence, Thomas Hobbes put forth his argument that the fear of violent death was the most powerful passion, one that was universally shared by all human beings in the way that religious beliefs were not. Therefore, the first duty of the state was to protect the right to life. Then John Locke expanded on this idea and said that life could also be threatened by a tyrannical state, and therefore the state itself needed to be constrained by the consent of the governed. It was to this backdrop of religious violence and the state's responsibility to protect lives of different faiths or beliefs that liberalism was born in the mid-17th century. It provided a solution to the problem of governing over diversity through its principle of tolerance. In Fukuyama's words, tolerance means that you do not have to agree with your fellow citizens on the most important things, but only that each individual should get to decide what they are without interference from you or the state. You can believe what you want, but you must do so in private life and not seek to impose your beliefs on your fellow citizens. And this is carried out through law. Law helps to apply this in the practical world. And this law, following Locke's observation, also constrains the state. And this is what Fukuyama calls classical liberalism, an institutional solution to the problem of peacefully managing diversity in pluralistic societies. And this is the first of three main justifications for liberalism. He calls it the pragmatic rationale, according to which liberalism is a way of regulating violence and allowing diverse populations to live peacefully with each other. He also says that this pragmatic rationale is the biggest selling point of liberalism. Luther brought forth this idea that faith is possessed or held by an inner self and is not synonymous with or reflected by external rituals. According to Luther, the essence of Christianity is faith alone, an inner state which may not be accessible even to the believer. It does not reside in an individual's conformity to the rules and regulations set by the Catholic Church. I could have faith and not conduct the rituals. I could conduct the rituals and not have faith. The Enlightenment thinkers such as Rousseau and Kant further build on this idea of the significance of the inner self. And Kant said that the capacity for moral choice is what makes us distinctively human. The freedom to make fundamental life choices is what gives human beings dignity, according to Fukuyama. And unlike intelligence, physical appearance, skin color, or other secondary characteristics, this freedom to make fundamental life choices is universally shared by all human beings. This forms the root of liberal universalism and equality. People of different nationalities have an equal capacity for moral choice. And this is how liberalism came to share a relationship with the scientific method of thinking, which also emerged during the Enlightenment, wherein individuals are assumed to be the best judges of their own interests and are able to take in and test empirical information about the outside world in the making of those judgments. Now, Kant prioritized the act of choice over any of the particular goods or ends that human beings seek. Meaning, it is not what you and I choose, but rather our capacity and our freedom to choose which is most important. And this is the very idea reflected in liberalism's principle of autonomy. Today, it is the act of choice which has the highest priority. This moral argument forms the second justification for liberalism. Liberalism protects basic human dignity and, in particular, human autonomy, the ability of each individual to make choices. By the 19th century, this idea of autonomy, the ability to choose for oneself, had extended into the economic arena as well. And the most important form of autonomy was the ability to buy, sell, and invest freely in a market economy. Now, liberalism encompassed property rights and contract enforcement to lower the risk of trade and investment with strangers. Liberalism, through law, here in the economic arena, protected the interests of those who were interested in investing their money in businesses, so that their investments were not taken away or expropriated by the government or their competitors or criminal organizations. Not only that, but international trade was also argued for and explained by Adam Smith and David Ricardo. Fukuyama points out that property rights existed before the right to association or vote. England and Netherlands were the first two European countries to establish strong property rights. Due to the significance and centrality of property rights in the liberal theory, the strongest advocates of liberalism tended to be the new middle classes, which were the byproduct of economic modernization, whom Karl Marx would call the bourgeoisie. In his address at the Virginia Convention, James Madison said that the rights of persons and the rights of property are the objects for the protection of which government was instituted. And he also consented that inequality would arise from the protection of unequal resources of acquiring property and the possession of unequal measures of property. This is the third main justification and final one for liberalism. Liberalism promotes economic growth by protecting property rights and the freedom to transact. In the chapters ahead, Fukuyama has expanded on each of these justifications, and he has explained how they have been taken to extremes on both the right and the left. In another video, I have explained what the words left and right mean in politics for those who are interested. Further ahead, Fukuyama has also discussed the flaws of liberalism that have arisen as a result of stretching the principles of liberalism to extreme ends. He has discussed the challenges to liberalism and laid a defense of liberalism. This book is crisp and it contains a hoard of new information, and yet it is not a difficult read. Do let me know if you would like a follow-up with further arguments from the book. Thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe if it is helpful. See you next time.